The floods in Cumbria, a 1,000-year event. But you see, if you take 100 different microclimates which exist in Britain, and there are 10 different climatic extreme events that could happen in each one, you're going to get a 1,000-year event once a year. These extreme weather events come around just as they always have. In any chaotic object, mathematically speaking, you would expect this to happen. It tells us nothing about whether the world is steadily warming. Yes, it has been warming for 300 years, during 280 of which we couldn't have had anything to do with it. And the Antarctic ice cap is expanding. The sea ice in the Antarctic reached a record extent in 2007, 3 weeks after the record minimum in the Arctic. There was a record maximum in the Antarctic.
The IPCC has a huge body of seemingly solid scientific evidence behind it, and they say that it's 90% likely that climate change is man-made. How do you refute that?
There is no scientific basis whatsoever for saying there is a 90% probability that most of the warming of the last 50 years was caused by humankind. None whatsoever. You could go, for instance, to a paper by Scafetta and West just last year, saying that 69% of all the warming of the last 50 years was caused by the sun. I'm not entirely convinced by that argument either. The fact is we have no means of knowing what are the influences that cause the climate to fluctuate in the short term, upwards or downwards. This is simply beyond our capacity to measure or analyse. What we do know, and this we can do by laboratory experiment and by a little bit of elementary mathematics, is what the maximum possible effect of adding CO2 to the atmosphere can be. And the answer is it's very, very, very small.
Even if climate change theory hasn't been entirely put to the test, isn't it better to do something now rather than wait for flooding, drought and temperature rises?
The precautions themselves, let us say, in the shape of replacing 1/3 of the world's agricultural land, which grew food, with growing biofuels instead. So we were once growing food for people that needed it. Now we grow biofuels for clunkers that don't. Result? A doubling of world food prices in just over a year. 3/4 of which was attributed by the World Bank to this biofuel scam, which comes out of the global warming scare. Result? If we have to pay twice as much for our food, it's inconvenient. If you're in a poor country, that difference of 100% in the price of your food is the difference between life and death. There have been major food riots in a dozen regions of the world, hardly reported at all in the West, because they're so busy reporting on every little icicle putatively dribbling in Greenland. And those food riots are happening because people are dying by the million of starvation who would not have died at all had this climate scare not engendered this dash for biofuels.
What do you think will happen to the climate in, say, the next 100 years?
I asked the world's greatest expert on the climate that, and that is Professor Richard Lindzen of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, generally recognised to be the man who knows more than anyone else in the world about how the atmosphere will behave. And I said to him, Dick, I said, I've been asked to make a bet on whether it's going to be warmer or cooler in the next 50 years. Can you tell me? He said, yes, I can. It will be either warmer or the same as today or cooler. And the chances that it will be warmer are exactly the same as the chances that it will be cooler.
And you're going to the Copenhagen Summit on Greenhouse Gases. What's your objective there?
My objective at Copenhagen will be to say to the leading delegations there, in particular the Americans, the Canadians, the Japanese, the Australians, the New Zealanders. I shan't bother with Europe because that is decided by commissars whom we don't elect, can't hold to account, can't remove and can't persuade. We are no longer a democracy in Western Europe. But I'm going to be talking to the delegations of the democracies, and I'm going to be saying to them one by one, very quietly, first of all, here's the science. It no longer adds up. And everybody knows it no longer adds up. And your voters now know it no longer adds up. We're moving away from that now. And we're moving towards a world in which, once again, the scepticism, which is the proper approach of the scientist, is becoming instinct in the ordinary voter's mind.
Will you be talking to the Russians?
Yes, I will, because although the present Russian leadership has had not always a very kindly press in Britain, I will tell you this, the Russian democracy, as it now is 20 times more democratic than the British democracy has become, because we now have 90% of our laws made for us by commissars, that is the official German word for the commissioners of the European Union, whom we don't elect, can't question, can't remove and can't replace. They make 90% of the laws of Britain. But you have a Duma, you have a parliament in Russia, which makes 100% of Russia's laws. You are now a true democracy. God bless you for it. Of course I'll be talking to your delegation, because I will be talking to the delegation of a democratic administration. We no longer have one. I shall not be bothering to talk to the British delegation.